Ecosystems don't stay the same forever. There are changes that occur over time, and these changes are referred to as something called succession. This succession occurs when you have disturbances that can change the way the ecosystem is. They can strip away vegetation, they can remove soil, and so forth, and so that can lead to lots of changes. Primary succession begins in an area where you've got no soil, just rock underneath, virtually lifeless area. If you might have after a volcanic eruption, or maybe the retreat of a glacier, or even a new island forming as a result of volcanic activity in the ocean. Secondary succession occurs when an existing community has been destroyed, but the soil is still present. And so this could happen after a storm of some kind. It could happen after settlers move into an area and clear like the forest and then move on, or someplace like that, or maybe just someplace that gets abandoned. The climax community is the final stage of succession, where you've got populations that stay relatively stable and are balanced with each other and with the environment. And so it stays the same for a very long time without a lot of changes. So we'll look at kind of how that works, okay? So you start off with if you start off with bare soil, usually the first kinds of organisms that work in, they're called pioneer species, would be things like lichens and algae. Lichens can live on bare rock. They can actually help form soil, and so they're among the first things that can colonize a bare rock area. Once you get the formation of soil, then the first things to grow are generally things like annual plants like grasses and things like that. And then you've got, after a while, when more soil is formed and the soil becomes more mature, then you start to get perennial plants and grasses, ones that don't have to be reseeded every year but can continue to grow from year to year. And then shrubs, and then small trees, softwood trees like pines, and then later hardwood trees, and a combination of different things within that climax community. Now, humans do a lot of things that can actually harm the environment, as you already probably know. Definitely, we can produce pollutants that can affect living things that are not even anywhere close to the source of the pollutants. The water cycle, of course, is going to transfer things from terrestrial to aquatic ecosystems. And then also when we release things into the atmosphere, that can actually promote lots of things going wrong there, like addition of too much CO2 or even the thinning of the ozone layer. Another thing that can happen is something called biological magnification, and this is when you have various toxins that can't be broken down by microorganisms that concentrates in the tissues of some of the trophic levels in the feeding chain. Here we have an example of PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, which are present in a lot of plastics. And other kinds of chemicals that are used in various things like that. If you have a small amount of that in the water, it's going to be first taken in by the phytoplankton, and then as the zooplankton eat the phytoplankton and eat mostly phytoplankton that has PCBs in it, they're going to have a higher level of the PCBs in their tissues than the phytoplankton did. The smelt, or other small fish that eat the zooplankton, are going to end up with an even higher concentration. The lake trout that eat the smelt would be even higher than that, and then the herring gull, which would eat the lake trout, would end up with the highest concentration, and that might cause difficulties in the production of eggs, or maybe the hatching ability of the eggs and so forth. We see the same kind of thing in eagles and other large birds like that from what happened with DDT. DDT was an insecticide that was used extensively, a very good insecticide, worked very well on a lot of different insects, especially mosquitoes and other things like other insect pests like that. It was widely used in agriculture and in communities worldwide from the 1940s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And they began to see later on that there were fewer eagles that were around, and as they investigated, they found that the level of DDT in the tissues of the eagles was very high. They would find eagle nests with broken shells, broken eggs, and undeveloped eaglets from those, and they had a really high level of DDT in their tissues, and so we began to restrict the use of DDT back in the 1960s and 70s to help eagles and other large birds like that recover, and we now see a lot more of them than we did for a period of time because the use of DDT has been curtailed a great deal. Biodiversity is the variety of living things in an ecosystem, and of course maintaining biodiversity is really important because you don't ever know what effect one animal has on another one. There are various community interactions in the populations, and losing one species may not seem like a whole lot, but it can definitely have a negative effect on the species richness of the ecosystem and perhaps on the ecosystem itself. The biggest problem with biodiversity is human alteration of habitats. We plow down large areas when we're making farms. When we develop new cities and new neighborhoods, we disrupt a lot of ecosystems, a lot of habitats. Forestry, mining, other kinds of pollution that contribute to the alteration of habitats. There's a lot of things that we do that really can have a negative effect. And so nowadays we try to have an ecological impact, or determine the ecological impact before we go into new areas. Another thing that is a big problem in losing habitats is invasive species. These invasive species will compete with native species, and since they're not native to the area, they may not have any natural enemies, and so they are able to increase their numbers greatly without and will actually prey on the native species or parasitize native species, or actually they compete at such a high level with the native species that they may compete them out of a habitat. A third major threat to biodiversity is overexploitation. When we cut down lots of beautiful mahogany trees because we love the mahogany wood and it makes really nice furniture, it has a big impact on the forests that grow mahogany trees. There are reduced populations of tigers, Galapagos tortoises, whales, rhinoceros, various populations of game fish, other kinds of animals that have been definitely threatened by being overhunted or over-harvested or poached along the way, and this causes major problems with the biodiversity in the areas they come from. Here's a classic example of the impact of an invasive species. Back in the mid-1850s, when Australia was still being colonized from England and Europe, somebody brought some rabbits to Australia. Well, rabbits were not native. Remember, all the mammals that are native to Australia are marsupials, like kangaroos and koalas, and the rabbits didn't really have any natural enemies there. Some of the rabbits got out, and the rabbits did what rabbits will do, and they reproduced greatly. And so this map shows you the spread beginning from 1860, the range in 1870, and by 1890 was this range, 1900, and so forth. And by 1980, they were rabbits pretty much throughout the continent of Australia. They destroyed farms, they destroyed ranches. You can see here a large denuded area with thousands of rabbits clustering around a water hole. Of course, they probably harbored some disease and things like that, and a rabbit is not, it's considered a pest, an agricultural pest in Australia still to this day. Conservation biology is trying to understand and work against losing biodiversity. And so conserving the ecosystems the way they are and protect populations and increase the populations of endangered species is very important in maintaining the biodiversity that we have in the world. And also threats posed by human activities. So when we are ready to go into a new area, we have to look at the environmental impact of what's going to happen there. various kinds of construction projects can be slowed greatly or even redirected as a result of environmental impact statements. We're looking now at restoration ecology, and this is using various kinds of principles to restore degraded areas to their natural state. If you've ever heard of Ducks Unlimited, this is a group that they're duck hunters. They started out as duck hunters, but what their job is, or what they're trying to do through their organization, is restore the natural wetlands that have been lost as a result of human activity, whether by pollution or whether by draining swamp areas and so forth, because the wetlands along the Texas coast are where a lot of the geese and ducks come to in the wintertime, which makes it an ideal place for duck hunting. If there aren't enough ducks that come there, then the duck hunters can't harvest their number of ducks, and that will reduce their numbers even more greatly. And so maintaining or restoring these areas to their natural state is a very important thing right now. Replanting native plants, making the waterways the way they were before, instead of taking down dams and levees, or instead of damming and levying the rivers and streams, if we resort to the natural course and reduce the human involvement, we can restore the ecology or the ecosystem back to the way it was before.